I did my presentation on creating a fashion line and what are the fundamental steps to do that. Now I could stand here and talk to you for half an hour about how to make a pleat and how to do a stitch, but I don't think that's very interesting to anybody. So instead, I'm going to tell you a story, and that's my story and how I got here. You all just saw the last page, but we're going to go back to the beginning because that's where all the fun happens. So at the beginning, of course, with any artistic journey or project, there's an inspiration. For me, I found this in Portland. It was Lodecca, the double-decker dress shop, and this was in a parking lot full of food trucks. And I saw it and I thought, wow, that's just so cool. I imagined if I could do that, like if I could create my own clothing, my own business, and actually get it going with people and my friends. This is kind of an unrealistic dream and hasn't quite happened, but what surprised me most is how far I actually did come. So I started with my designing process, which was not the way it should have been, I'm sure. It was just, I saw this and I started lying awake thinking of all the different things that I could make, which didn't help my sleep, but it was really fun and I dreamt about a lot of really cool things. So I slowly started to make things in my head, and the next part was, of course, drawing them down so that I could have something to look back on. And this is an example. This is not my portfolio. This is an example of how one might be. Often they include pictures from magazines of things that you might want to include in your designs, or bits of fabric and little notes on how you're going to do things. And this was a really hard part for me. One, because I don't like collages, so mine does not look like this. And two, because in my head, when I was creating everything, nobody else could see them and nobody else could judge it. But when I drew them, then everybody would be able to scrutinize them and tell me what they thought about them or how I should change them. But eventually, I did do it. Oh, sorry, wrong way. There we go. And this is mine, or a page out of mine. So, as you can see, there's no little bits of fabric or pictures cut out, but this really helped me to formulate my plans, which then came down to making everything, which was a lot harder than I had expected. In the past, I'd made dresses from old dresses that I'd had, tracing out patterns from the shirts, or making skirts out of little videos I found online, or from things friends had told me. But I'd never really attempted to make something that was all my own and that had come completely from my head. So it was a very lengthy process, one that was full of frustration and some really happy times. So I started out, and I remember when Mr. Dunstan first asked me when I told him I was starting this project, he said, so how long does it take you to make a dress, like approximately? And I said, well, I think I can do it in a day. That's not quite accurate, especially when I'm learning new skills and having to research everything as I go and making my own patterns, as well as going to school every day and doing homework and musical rehearsals. So it was a lot harder than I had expected, but it was a really, really interesting process for me to go through. So one thing that I didn't know about when I started, and something that I picked up in my research, was that when you're creating a whole fashion line or collection, you want each piece to be consistent throughout. So things like shape or silhouette and color and pattern and fabric are all things that you have to think about when you're creating a line. So this is an example. This is obviously not my clothing, but so this is an example of a fashion show, probably somewhere like Paris, where they're all fancy and cool. And you can see that they all have very similar colors. A lot of them are white or with a bit of black, and then gold detailing. It's also a lot of the same fabric, so it looks kind of stretchy, and it all flows the same way. That also leads into the fact it all has the same kind of general shape. It's tight around and then gets loose at the bottom, or has some big thing, embellishment going on at the top. So I don't know if that's the style for you, but it is apparently for some people, and that's something that you can really tell is all the way through the line. I But when I found out about this, I thought, oh, okay, well, you know, if I'm really trying to make a line, I gotta somehow make this work. And unfortunately, I didn't go out and buy all the fabric for all my pieces because fabric was really expensive and I had some of it already. So I thought, okay, well, I'm not gonna go out and buy everything new just so that it looks like a professional line. I'm not going to Paris or anything. So I figured I had some blues and greens, and often when you're creating a color palette for your line, things like complementary colors, so a blue and orange, can work well together in a line, or two colors that are next to each other on the color spectrum, so green and blue. So this is the direction I headed in, and you can see with 3 of the pieces that came out, the blue dress, the green dress, and the white dress, they're all kind of similar in shape, and the blues and greens go together. Yeah, although some things that I also did not take into consideration through my long process of making was that things would have to change. I couldn't just imagine them and then they would come out perfect. So as you can see, that's my drawing in my sketchbook, and that's how it turned out. It was going to have scalloped edges, and then I watched a video on it and got a little scared, so that didn't happen. But I think it turned out okay anyway. Okay. In the same way, I had originally planned for that piece to be an entire dress that was flowy and going out, and unfortunately I didn't really plan the skirt lengths properly, and it ended up being a skirt and a shirt. So the process was different than I had expected, but it was very interesting. There were lots of times when I just thought, no, I'm going to give up because I can't make this pattern. This skirt isn't fitting on properly, or there's weird folds, and I many times asked myself, why am I still doing this? I mean, I could just be doing a normal project where you research something for a couple of weeks and then write a big paper on it. But now that I'm here, I'm so glad that I kept going, and I think it was just pure love for what I was doing that made me keep going. So here's a picture of me being really happy. This was when I finished my first dress, which is the one that Isabel came out in, or almost finished. And I made my parents take pictures of me late at night because I was like, look, I made it finally. And so that was a very exciting part, and I think that really helped me keep going and try to finish the rest of the pieces I was doing. The other one is, actually that's not when I had finished it, although it is pretty close to finished there. It was when I was trying to decide if I was going to somehow make it work as a dress or if I was going to make it into a skirt and a shirt, and my parents said, well, take a picture of it because then you'll know and you'll have a record of it, even if you do change it. So that was really helpful. I wish that now that I'd taken more pictures of my process to show to you and to look back on as I move forward. So, yeah. So this comes to a part where all of you get to participate. So often after a designer has designed everything, and then, I mean, if you're a professional designer and you have little people to work for you, then they make it. But you have to put on a fashion show, like the one that went on today, to promote yourself to potential buyers of retail stores, and hope that they will put it into their stores. So obviously I'm not doing that this year or maybe for a while because that's a huge thing, but hopefully at some point something similar will happen. So to replicate this kind of thing, can you all pretend that you are either a owner of a retail store or you're just a customer and you're going in? How many of you would buy something or buy something for one of your friends? And don't worry, guys, I make things for you too.
Oh, I'm down. I was going to buy something.
Got anybody buy things? No.
Yes.
Just a piece or one of the
like any of them. Yeah. Okay.
Look at
Thank you. I don't know if you can tell you. I've talked about it. So, yeah. So unfortunately, you guys are, well, not unfortunately, but you are all much more generous and nice than the retail industry and fashion industry. Because often, even after having fashion shows and going to many stores and talking to the buyer managers and going around and trying to find somebody who will buy your stuff, often there won't even be somebody who will take it. So this is something that obviously I probably won't be moving into very soon, but I think it was a really interesting thing to research because I never expected that I would come so far anyway. This is where we start to wrap up. But I know that we have all heard it many times from motivational speakers, from teachers, and that is, if you really want it, or if you put your heart into it, you can do anything. And I was reluctant to say it, because honestly that sounds really cheesy, and who's really gonna be like, wow, Elsa, you're just trying to be a motivational speaker, okay. But no, this was something that really, this project really brought out for me, was that there were so many times that I just wanted to give up, or just stop. And I didn't. I don't really know why, but I didn't, and now I'm here, and it seems really weird, and I'm sure for a lot of you it's like, yeah, you're doing a fast presentation, cool. But I never thought that I would be able to put on a fashion show. I never thought that I would finish anything that I made. I never thought that my clothing would be worn to grad. I never thought that I could make money off of what I'd made. And this was kind of just a huge, amazing thing. And so it really made me realize that if you do love something enough, even if it goes terribly, if you keep trying, it will happen eventually, no matter what. Like, if you just keep going for it, then you'll be good. And so that was, I hope that coming from up here, I don't know if any of you see this as amazing, but to me it's really amazing, and I hope that you all have things that are like that. So I hope that this helps you see that that could actually happen. Another thing that I found during this project is that fashion is not just a frivolous thing. When I started the project, I was really scared to tell people what I was doing it on, because I thought they would tell me, oh, you know, that's just unimportant and vain, like who cares about clothing? And so I didn't for a while. And then I realized that fashion and clothing is more, it's more than that. It's more like an art form, or a form of self-expression for not only the person who's making it, but also the people who are wearing it. Because in our society today, we're all buying clothing, if not like every month, if not every week. And so, and it's, in some ways it can be seen as unfortunate that we all judge each other so much on what we wear. But in truth, it gives us such a good opportunity to be able to show people who we really are at only one glance. They can look at us and see what we want to tell them. So I would say for you guys, if next time you're going shopping and you feel like you don't want to tell anybody they're going shopping because you think they're going to think you're stupid or whatever, just be proud of it. And also, and let the clothes have such a possibility to speak for you. They're used right now as a form of conformity and to fit into our society, but they don't have to be. They can be used as a way to show people who you really are and show people your individualism.